Conversion Bible is powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you to run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free. Welcome to Conversion Bible. Today, we're diving into something that can be a real game changer for your Shopify store. Form analytics. Have you ever wondered why so many visitors get right to the edge of converting, signing up, contacting you, or even buying, and then just disappear? Maybe you've looked at your checkout abandonment rate and thought, there must be a reason.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you're absolutely right. And today we're going to help you find those reasons.
Yeah. I think that's a really common experience. You know, you put all this work into getting someone to your site, getting them interested in your product, and then they just vanish at the last moment. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, and then you're left wondering, what could it be?
Totally.
You know, is it something about my form? Is it something about the way it's set up? Or, you know, just the very fact that it's there?
That's what we're going to get into today.
Yeah, today's going to be fun. So think of this as your shortcut to understanding what your customers are really doing when they encounter forms on your Shopify store. Our goal today is simple: to show you how analyzing those online forms, whether it's a quick newsletter sign-up, a customer service contact, or that crucial checkout page, can unlock higher conversion rates, create a much smoother experience for your shoppers, and give you some truly valuable insights into what makes them tick.
Absolutely.
Because when you think about it, forms are at the heart of so many interactions on your online store. They're the entry point for building your email list, answering customer questions, and most importantly, closing a sale.
Exactly.
But here's a surprising statistic. Some industry reports suggest that form abandonment can be as high as 70%.
Wow, that's huge.
That's a massive amount of potential revenue.
It's vanishing.
It's crazy to think about.
The good news is, often it's the smallest tweaks. A single unnecessary field, a confusing label.
Yeah, that can make all the difference in plugging those leaks.
It's often something you'd never even think about, like the really tiny detail that's tripping people up.
Right.
And once you identify it, it's such an easy fix.
And that makes a big difference. So that's encouraging, at least.
Absolutely.
It's not that we have this insurmountable problem. It's just a matter of finding those few things and fixing them.
That's it. That's the core message we want you to take away today. Investing a little bit of time in understanding your form analytics isn't about some huge, complicated project. It's about identifying those tiny points of friction that cause people to give up.
Right.
Fix those, and you can see surprisingly fast results and a real boost to your revenue without having to spend more on attracting new traffic. Form analytics is like a heat map for your customers' frustration. It shows you exactly where they're stumbling so you can clear the path to conversion.
So instead of just throwing more money at the problem, you can actually solve it by making your site more user-friendly.
Right. And sometimes that's all it takes.
Okay, so let's get specific. When we talk about Shopify stores, what exactly is form analytics?
So at its most basic, form analytics is the process of tracking how users interact with the individual fields within your online forms. This goes way beyond simply knowing if someone hit the submit button or not. It dives deep into their behavior within the form itself. I'm talking about which fields they actually filled out, where they might have hesitated or spent a lot of time, which fields they skipped, and crucially, at what point they decided to leave the form altogether.
Wow. Okay. So it's much more detailed than just looking at page views or bounce rates on a page with a form.
Precisely. General website analytics gives you a bird's eye view, how many people landed on a page. Form analytics is like zooming in with a microscope. Think of it this way. Website analytics tells you how many people walked into your physical store.
Okay.
Form analytics shows you exactly which aisles they browsed, which products they picked up and looked at, and most importantly, why some of them put things back and left without buying.
That's a great analogy. And in the Shopify ecosystem, what are the main types of forms we should be thinking about analyzing?
So, you've got your standard contact forms for customer service inquiries. Then there are newsletter sign-up forms, which are vital for building your email list and nurturing potential customers.
Yeah.
Of course, the big one is the checkout form,
Right.
where the actual purchase happens. And don't forget feedback or survey forms,
Right.
which can provide incredibly valuable insights into your customer experience after they've interacted with your store.
Right.
So it's not just about capturing leads or making sales. It's also about understanding how to improve the overall experience for your customer.
Yeah, and those survey forms can be so valuable for that
Okay.
because they're giving you that direct feedback on what they liked, what they didn't like, what could be better.
And sometimes they'll even give you ideas for new products or features.
Okay, so we've got all these different forms that we should be looking at. And when we're analyzing these forms, what are the key things we should be looking at? What are the essential metrics?
There are several crucial metrics. The completion rate is key. That's the percentage of people who started filling out the form and actually submitted it. The flip side of that is the abandonment rate, the percentage who started but didn't finish.
Yeah.
Then you have the average time to submit, which could be a strong indicator of whether a form is too long or confusing. And finally, the error frequency, how often users are encountering errors and in which specific fields those errors are occurring.
So you can see not just that there is a problem,
Yeah.
but kind of where the problem is happening
Exactly.
within the form. So that's good. It sounds like we've come a long way from just guessing what works best on our forms.
We absolutely have. In the early days of online stores, optimizing forms was often based on gut feeling.
Yeah.
Or following general best practices. But now,
Yeah.
we have sophisticated tools that can track almost every single interaction a user has with a form field. It's almost like having session recording,
Yeah.
where you see how someone navigates an entire page,
Yeah.
but specifically focused on the form elements. This data-driven approach is what makes modern form optimization so much more effective. It can lead to some surprising insights.
Yeah. And all of this directly feeds into conversion rate optimization, or CRO. Right?
Exactly. Your forms, especially that checkout form, are often the last hurdle a customer needs to clear before they complete a purchase. If you can make that process as smooth and frictionless as possible, you're directly impacting your overall conversion rate. A well-optimized form reduces those last-minute hesitations and encourages users to complete their intended action, turning more browsers into buyers.
Right. So when we talk about these analytics tools, how do they actually work behind the scenes? What's the technical basis for all this tracking?
Typically, it involves embedding a small snippet of JavaScript code into your Shopify store's theme. This code then listens for and records user interactions within the form fields. Things like when someone enters a field, what they type, how long they spend there, if they trigger an error, and when they move to the next field. This data is then sent to the Form Analytics tool, which processes it and presents it in easy-to-understand dashboards, allowing you to spot trends and patterns in how people are interacting with your forms.
Okay. So it's kind of like a little spy sitting on your shoulder, watching what they're doing.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
But it's all anonymized and aggregated, so you're not seeing individual people's data. You're seeing trends and patterns.
Right. Okay, so we're gathering all this data about how people interact with our forms. But what's the why behind their actions? Let's dig into the psychology of form completion.
This is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay.
One key psychological principle at play is cognitive load theory, essentially.
Yeah.
The more fields you throw at a user, the more mental effort it takes for them to process and complete the form. If the cognitive load becomes too high, they can feel overwhelmed and simply abandon the task.
Okay, so it's like they're getting tired of answering all these
Oh,
questions.
exactly. It's like asking someone
Yeah.
to solve a complex math problem when they're already exhausted. They're just going to give up. One surprisingly common example
Okay.
is asking for a company name on a newsletter sign-up. Even though it seems like a small request, it adds just enough extra thought that it can significantly decrease sign-up rates.
That's a great point. You wouldn't think such a small thing could make a big difference.
Exactly. Then you have user expectations. In today's fast-paced digital world, people expect things to be quick and intuitive, especially on their phones. If your forms feel clunky, take too long to load, or are difficult to navigate, particularly on a small screen, you're going to see people dropping off.
Right. So it's like if you go to a restaurant and you have to wait an hour for your food, you're probably not going to go back there.
Right. It's the same with online forms. People are impatient. They want things to be fast and easy. And if you make them wait or jump through too many hoops, they're going to go somewhere else.
And what about the sheer number of questions we ask? Does that have a psychological impact?
Absolutely. This relates to the idea of decision fatigue. Each additional question, even if it seems simple, requires the user to make a small decision. Over time, these small decisions can add up, draining the user's mental energy and making them less likely to complete the form.
Okay. So they're just getting mentally exhausted.
Yeah, it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each little question is a tiny annoyance, and eventually They just get fed up.
Trust is also a huge factor online, isn't it? How does that relate to someone filling out a form?
It's massive.
Yeah.
If a form looks suspicious,
Yeah.
asks for seemingly unnecessary personal information, or doesn't clearly explain why certain details are required, it can trigger red flags. People become concerned about their privacy and the security of their data, and are more likely to abandon the form than risk providing that information. Clearly and concisely explaining why you need specific information can go a long way in building trust.
So it's like if you're walking down a dark alley and someone asks you for your wallet, you're probably not going to give it to them.
Right. But if they explain that they're a police officer and they need to see your ID, you're more likely to cooperate.
Okay, yeah. So transparency is key.
Exactly.
You mentioned mobile earlier. Are there psychological differences in how people interact with forms on their phones versus on a desktop computer?
Definitely. On mobile, screen real estate is limited, and users are often multitasking or on the go. This means shorter forms with larger, easy-to-tap buttons are absolutely crucial. The tolerance for lengthy forms or complex interactions is much lower on mobile.
Okay.
Also, people often have different expectations about the kind of information they're willing to share on their phone versus a computer.
That makes sense. It's like the difference between writing a quick text message and writing a long email. You're just not going to put as much effort into a text message.
Okay.
What about the difference between mandatory and optional fields? How does that play into user psychology?
Bombarding users with a long list of mandatory fields can feel intrusive and demanding. People are much more likely to complete a form if they feel like. They're only providing truly essential information. Making non-critical fields optional can significantly reduce the feeling of overwhelm and boost completion rates.
Okay, so it's like going through airport security. If they ask you to take off your shoes and belt.
That's one thing. But if they ask you to strip naked, that's going to be a problem.
Right. So only ask for what you absolutely need.
Exactly.
And finally, are there any cultural or demographic nuances we should be aware of when designing our forms?
There can be. Different cultures might have varying levels of comfort with sharing certain types of personal information online. Similarly, different age groups or demographics might have different expectations about the length and complexity of online forms. Understanding your target audience can help you tailor your forms to their specific expectations and sensitivities.
Okay, so that's really important to think about your target audience and what they might be comfortable with.
Absolutely.
We've got a good handle on the psychological factors at play. Now, let's get back to the data. What are the absolute essential form analytics metrics that Shopify store owners need to be tracking? What are the 2-3 key metrics that can give us the most impactful insights?
If I had to narrow it down to the most impactful, I'd say first, focus on your form completion rate. This gives you the overall picture of how effective your form is. A low completion rate is a clear signal that something is wrong. Second, pay very close attention to field-level abandonment rates. This tells you exactly where users are dropping off within the form. If you see a high abandonment rate on a specific field, that's a huge red flag. For example, if you see a lot of people leaving when asked for their phone number on a newsletter sign-up, that's a strong indicator that it's a point of friction.
So instead of just looking at the overall drop-off, we can pinpoint the exact problematic questions.
Precisely. And the third key metric I'd highlight is time to completion. If it's taking users a surprisingly long time to fill out a particular form, it might be too complex or have confusing fields. Monitoring this can guide you on where you can simplify the process. These three, overall completion, field level abandonment, and time to completion, will give you the most actionable insights into your form performance.
That makes a lot of sense. Now let's talk about putting this knowledge into practice. How do we actually implement form analytics on our Shopify stores? What are the main options?
You have a few main avenues. Shopify's native analytics provides some basic information, particularly around order conversion rates. But it's quite limited. When it comes to detailed form behavior, like field-level data or partial entries, for more in-depth analysis, you'll almost certainly need to explore third-party form analytics tools that integrate with Shopify.
And what are a couple of those third-party tools that you'd recommend Shopify store owners take a look at?
A couple of really strong options to consider are Zuko Checkout Analytics, which, as the name suggests, is specifically focused on providing detailed insights into your checkout process and identifying points of friction. Another excellent tool is Amplitude, which is a more comprehensive behavioral analytics platform that allows you to track various user interactions, including detailed form events
Okay.
within the broader context of their journey on your store. And while not solely dedicated to forms, heat map and session recording tools like Hotjar or Lucky Orange can also be incredibly valuable for visually understanding how users interact with your forms.
So it sounds like if you really want to dive deep into this, you might want to consider using a combination of tools.
Absolutely. You can get a much more complete picture that way.
So once we've chosen a tool, what does the technical setup typically involve? Is it something a non-technical store owner can handle?
Generally, it involves adding a small snippet of JavaScript code to your Shopify store's theme. Many of the dedicated form analytics apps offer automatic installation through the Shopify App Store, which makes the process very user-friendly and doesn't require any coding knowledge. However, it's always a good idea to follow the installation instructions carefully to avoid any potential conflicts with other apps or custom code.
All right. So it can be pretty simple, but it's always good to be careful.
Exactly.
What about stores that get a lot of traffic? Are there any things they need to keep in mind regarding the amount of data being collected?
For stores with very high traffic volumes, it's something to be aware of. Some analytics tools might offer data sampling options, where they analyze a representative subset of your website visits to manage the data load. This can help ensure that the analytics tool itself doesn't slow down your website's performance while still providing valuable insights. Think of it like taste testing a new batch of cookies.
Okay.
You don't need to eat every single one to know if they're good.
Yeah.
Sampling a few can give you a pretty accurate idea.
That's a great analogy. And how can we connect this form data with the other analytics we're probably already using, like Google Analytics?
Most form analytics tools offer integration with Google Analytics 4, GA4. This allows you to send events to GA4 when users interact with your forms, for example, when they start filling out a form, when they complete a specific field, or when they abandon the form. This integration gives you a more holistic view of the customer journey, allowing you to see how form interactions fit into the overall user experience on your site.
Okay, so it's like putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. Are there any final technical best practices we should keep in mind when implementing form analytics?
Definitely. Pay close attention to script placement and website performance. Make sure your analytics scripts are loaded in a way that doesn't negatively impact your page loading times, as slow loading can itself lead to form abandonment. Also, always be mindful of privacy compliance and data collection regulations, like GDPR. Ensure you're being transparent with your customers about the data you're collecting and how it's being used. Finally, it's always a good idea to conduct thorough cross-browser and cross-device testing after implementing any new analytics tools to ensure that the tracking is working correctly and that your forms are displaying properly for all users.
Okay, so I've got to test.
Absolutely. You want to make sure everything is working as expected.
Now, many Shopify store owners might be using the built-in Shopify Forms app,